Hello and welcome to Weekend Markets. It is Monday, the 11th of March, so it's obviously not the weekend. We've got an extra edition of the Weekend Markets with an old friend of mine from the year 2000, something like that, Clem?
Yeah, we go back a long way. I mean, I was only 16 at the time, but time marches on.
Yes, exactly. So we've gone, that was the year 2000 was the dot-com bubble. Are we on in any bubbles at the moment?
Well, I mean, I keep looking at things to find bubbles, but I mean, there's an argument to be made for the Nasdaq, for the Magnificent Seven, so called. I think that's perhaps, you could call that one. But if I look at the technical stuff, it seems that we're in a sort of long-term, almost straight line progression. You need one of them for a bubble. I mean, boom, bubble, bust, right? So we're in a boom period, for sure. But I think that boom period is going to go on for quite some time because what hasn't actually happened really is inflation hasn't worked into asset prices. In fact, inflation is very good for putting up the cost of living, but not very good at putting up the value of assets of a certain type. That comes later. There's got a big lag between when there's all this money printed and it goes in and it hits your price of lettuce and the price of fish fingers. That's immediate. But the asset prices can often come down because of the disruption to the financial system that the inflation causes. But it does come through into asset prices in the end. And I think, some of the element of what you're going to see with asset values, or rather asset prices rather than values, is that they're going to be catching up over the next few years with the actual increase in money supply that we've seen.
Isn't that
Does that make
slightly,
sense?
isn't you want to, I was going to say, isn't that slightly counterintuitive? At the
Well,
moment,
things have to be counterintuitive, otherwise everyone would understand it and it wouldn't be in the price, right? If everyone understands everything, it's in the price, so there's no money to be made. So you only have to find the only things to be found that can actually make you money in the market are things that everyone goes, what the hell are you talking about? Because if they think, yeah, of course, they would already be in that market, wouldn't they? The price would already be right, or even too high, perhaps.
yeah. So I think a couple of weeks ago, I was saying that we're in a nascent bull market, which I think is probably when I actually met you at that time earlier in the month. But my basis was that obviously you've got capitulation, you've got small caps going bust, ones that have been hanging around for 2 or 3 years, trying to find that last bit of money to get that project going bust. And so you'd have the start of a bull market when you've got companies going bust and you've got people giving up on the stock market. So every other headline is the London stock market's finished, et cetera, which actually that may be the case, the latter bit, it may be finished. But that kind of vibe where people are, just desperate and saying that the market's doomed, tends to be the bottom. So that is counterintuitive, right?
Well, I mean, I was going around saying it's the bottom about 6 months ago. The,
Right.
the bottom of the market in terms of it's like when you read in the press that China's all over, it's finished. It's a dead duck, which was what 4 or 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. That's the bottom of the Chinese market. That's when you should be buying like crazy, right? Because they ain't going nowhere. They ain't going bust. They've hit the bottom, and that bottom is connected to when they came out of COVID lockdown, which was like 6 months after everybody else, right? So they're on a 6 months lag, and all the business when everybody came out of COVID lockdown here, or different months, different countries, there was a big gap from what hadn't happened in the previous 18 months. So there's this big gap coming down the pipeline. Yeah. And it's people are noticing that big gap right now. I mean, particularly people like, the M&A uh, train that's been coming for a couple of years now has arrived in the station. But it's obvious when all these fantastic companies are going at ridiculously low prices that the Americans are going to show up and say, yeah, we'll buy that, have some of our money. We just printed it because it's just obvious. But, if you're not going to get on a plane and fly to London because you're frightened of catching a cold, you're not going to be doing that M&A. And when you get on that plane and you go to see that company you're going to buy, they're not going to say, yeah, just sign at the bottom, it's yours. It takes 6 months or 9 months or a year. So there's this lag. And the moment we came out of COVID lockdown was, what is it now? A yearish, year and a half. Well, all the balls that started rolling back then, all the phone calls that were to, hey Goldman, who should I buy in Englandshire? Oh, we buy them. Yeah, okay, give them a call. All that started those many years ago is now coming to fruition. So all these lags are built in. But the day the market bottomed systemically was the day that inflation came down. That day when the inflation was lower was the day that my portfolio completely changed its way that it was performing. It just went clunk. Oh, I'm not doing what I've been doing for the last 18 months, or rather, beginning of 2023, when the penny dropped with the institutions that we had, rising interest rates forever and inflation, who knows how high, was the moment my portfolio went. And, I saw that and I thought, well, do I hold on or do I bail out now and wait for it to change? Well, it could change at any moment because we're coming out of COVID. We're out of COVID. Things are going to be getting better. So I can take a few blows to the head until the penny drops with everybody else. And the moment that occurred was the day that the inflation rate numbers came in as lower. And literally the whole thing went clunk, 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 and went back into bull mode. And we've been in bull mode since then. And everyone's going, oh, we're dying. Oh, it's the end of the world. Oh, I'm so sad. And the media goes, oh, everyone's going bust, cost of living. Oh. And all that stuff, right? But actually, the world's changed and it's going that way now. And all you have to know in the market is which way is the market going? Is it going up? Is it going down? Well, it's going up, and it's going up for 2 to 3 years, maybe more, but at least 2, most likely 3, maybe as long as 5. 2 to 3 years, it's going that way. So what you have to do is jump on board, have a nice spread portfolio, don't do anything stupid like buy a name company, and you're going to make a lot of money.
So that is good news. So it is the case that some companies going bust and the return of M&A and moaning in the mainstream media, those are the signs and have been the signs, as well as inflation going down, if you believe those figures. Those have been the 4 signs of a turnaround. And you're punchy enough to say we've got 2 to 3 years of actually looking at your portfolio and seeing plus signs rather than minus signs more of the time.
Well, I mean, it's still quite a noisy market, okay, and that's always a sign that there's something explosive is in the mix. But I think the big picture is the most important picture. And the big picture was 2019, world going on as normal, COVID, boom, absolute massive economic catastrophe, right? And people made their calls, governments made their calls, central banks made their calls, and basically papered over a huge economic chasm. And then we came out the other end, and there's a mess to clean up, and that mess has been cleaned up for the last 18 months or so. But the world is coming back. But you can't underestimate the thing that people don't, that you don't read about, you don't hear about. The really, really, really important thing is that during the lockdowns, nobody got trained. There were no new pilots becoming pilots. There were no new nurses at medical school becoming nurses. There were no new lorry drivers becoming lorry drivers. There were no new dentists drilling people's fillings. All that stuff that takes time to get a certificate to say you're allowed to do it. Or
no new hairdressers.
To be able to do it. Probably hairdressers too, yeah. But you're okay. You're okay. But me, look at it. I mean, actually, I could riff on hairdressers, because actually, that's another thing that COVID did to the whole system. It disrupted that. So now people are just buzz cutting themselves, right? So all that business that used to be down the hairdresser, a certain group are now, it was good news for whoever and bad news for the hairdressers. And again, that will change the dynamic and it will go back that way and this way and that way, etc. So COVID has created a new era. We are now in a new era, a new social era, a new economic era, a new market era. It's a new era. So people have to forget everything they know, forget all the bad news, and realize that we're now slightly reorganized economically, market-wise, socially, and that leads to consequences. And for me, there's three things going on out there. There's a load of people that are really knocking themselves out to do stuff, and I'm amongst those group, and I'm bumping into them, and it's really, really exciting. And then there's a group of people that are just giving up, and that's it. They're going to suffer entropy death and forget it. They've just given up, or they love the new world that they found themselves in, and they ain't coming back. And then that's leaving a lot of room. It's like big trees have fallen, and the young trees are coming up, and that's exciting because post-war outcomes, which is COVID is very similar to a war in many ways. Post-war vacuum to be filled is a dramatically exciting economic prospect.
So it's the Roaring Twenties again.
Well, it could be the Roaring Twenties. That's not bad. Watch out for 29. But apart from that, you're in good shape. And if you're in the wrong country and guys with little toothbrush moustaches show up, maybe pay that attention to that as well. But I think that maybe 60s is more of a thing, because people think about the 60s. They were great. They're incredibly inflationary, the 60s. Absolutely wild inflation in the 60s, but people hadn't really quite got it through their head. And then they saw it in spades in the 70s. And then they, but more like late 50s, early 60s, because after the war, there was a period of real grinding depression, effectively. It wasn't really necessarily recession, but there was absolutely no money. Nobody had any money. And in fact, they cut the value of money in half in 47 when they took all the silver out of the coins, which used to be pure silver before the First World War. 1920, they cut the silver content into half. 47, they cut it down to zero. And that period from 47 to maybe late 50s, had rationing up until Churchill got back in. But if you take that out, there was no money to buy assets. And you could buy, between 1948 and 1971, assets went up 200 times, certain assets. Things like artwork and coins, numismatic coins, and Picasso's and Henry Moore's went up 200-fold, because it went from a world where nobody had any money, even if they wanted to buy it. Even if you wanted to sell your Picasso, no one had any money to buy it. They just didn't have any money supply, to a world where they pumped the money in, and you got the Roaring 60s and the Beatles and all that jazz, or all that rock and roll. And by the 70s, the actual nominal value of those sort of assets have gone up 200 to 20,000 times, 20,000%.
All right. So you've given the broad brush there. So, happy days here again, et cetera, et cetera. Just some individual points. Right. Some individual points I want to touch on. First one is the London Stock Exchange, and London, the stock exchange in London, and how is it the end there? Is everybody just gone to the Nasdaq? What's the picture there, or is this just a temporary blip and we'll be back to normal? London listed companies.
I don't know. The way I see it is this: bargain basement Britain, all those big companies are going to get swept up, going to get bought out. You'll get your 40% uplift every time one gets knocked out. Okay, so that's all I look at. I mean, who's going to? I mean, it would be a remarkable achievement if the Tories get back in. Could happen with all this nonsense that's going on. But it doesn't matter. I mean, if the Labour Party get in, I mean, maybe it will be there'll be a big relief rally. Who knows? But I mean, the Brexit gambit has basically been refuted, because the Brexit gambit was, if we're not part of Europe, if we succeed from the United States of Europe, we've got the testicular fortitude to go forth swashbuckling into the world and conquer with our British spirit. And it turns out that UK hasn't got that spirit in it.
No.
And therefore it's going to be just going to go, and that's what's happening to the London Stock Exchange. The UK does not have, as institutionally, the gumption to do what's necessary to achieve a independent superpower. It just hasn't got the testicular fortitude,
Nothing to do
and
with nothing to
therefore,
do with the regulation, the red tape, the high
well, that's
taxes.
all part of it, isn't it? That's all part of it. If you're going to swash your buckle, you can't have a nanny following up behind you, can you? Yeah. If you're gonna stick it to the rest of the world, you can't have someone saying, "Oh no, no, the comma's not there. Oh no, this. Oh dear, oh dear. What's the ratio of different groups of people?" You can't have any of that, can you? You've got to go forward and be flashman about it. You've got to stick it to the rest of the world. You can't do that with nanny coming behind you. Oh, you haven't finished your breakfast. You can't do that, can you? So all this regulation stuff, and the regulators. I mean, I don't know what to say about them. I mean, let's put it this way. Let's take a British institution like the Takeover Panel. Okay, so if you completely wreck all the rules of takeover, all they can say is, "Oh, you've been very, very naughty. No one's going to talk. No one's allowed to talk to you anymore." They throw you in jail for 1,000 years in America, and you've got people running all over the rule book in the UK. Yeah, but they're people from abroad, so the regulator goes, "Oh, they're far away. It's too much work." Oh, that's why so many of the people that are in the AIM market don't live in the UK, because they can come in here and raid and then go off home again and not fear any consequences. You know,
Non-doms.
for example. But just
Good
if you
people.
look at the whole, it's just a mess. There's enough regulation to go around, but it's the wrong kind of regulation, as they would say about leaves on the line. It's like you can fill as many buildings as you like with bureaucrats. You make it really difficult for the people that want to do anything, and you make it no problem for the people that want to do bad things, because you don't do anything about them. You
The
just
main
go
thing
around.
is the main thing is to be tough on the parking tickets and soft on the axe murderers. That's the best way forward in life.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it must be said that the UK is quite tough on axe murderers, but anybody between axe murderers and motorists don't get a look, right? So
Motorists are the worst.
if
Motorists are the worst. They are actually, the devil's spawn.
well, I think we don't they get taught that at university though.
And cyclists, of course, and anyone else who's on the road. Right. So so you covered that. The other point is obviously the elephant in the room at the moment is Bitcoin at 72,000. Very exciting. To me, that means that there's plenty of liquidity out there, because people are quite happy to invest in hot air. They should be happy to invest in other things as well, or at least there'll be a trickle down effect. A bubble in Bitcoin or not?
Um, for I'm getting cognitive dissonance from what you just said, because you're a anti-authoritarian, minarchist kind of guy, right? Therefore, you should be loving all over Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a tremendous kind of currency. It has all the sorts of strengths that things that have the the government poking over every different thing, regulators regulating everything. It's unregulated as a thing. I mean, the machine that is the Bitcoin machine is not regulated. No one can tell the Bitcoin machine to stop or go here or go there.
Well, yes, exactly.
Right?
And so that actually, that's what I would say, in the sense that Bitcoin is a pure market. If the FTSE was a pure market, it wouldn't be at 7,000 now. It would also be at 70,000. But with all the
I think that's
regulations,
right.
all the rules, we are swimming through swimming through concrete, in fact. And the reason that the Nasdaq and the S&P
Treacle better.
is
Treacle will do.
yeah, exactly.
Treacle will
Yes,
do.
well, freshly,
Totally right.
freshly mixed concrete. The reason that the Nasdaq and Bitcoin and the S&P are on record highs, and even the DAX have been at record high, is because here we are swimming through treacle. We have to work out what the treacle is. It may be tax, it may be the government, it may be the weather, it could be anything. But and in fact, even your favorite gold, which we had with the last time you spoke. You did say that when gold breaks, it will break in a spectacular way, because it has been swimming through treacle up to the $2,000 level. And when it goes, you'll see two, you'll see it break through two, then it'll be next week, it'll be 3, 4, 5, and it'll actually start moving. But gold is obviously not a pure market. It hasn't been a pure market. And so therefore it's much slower to react. But I think the gold is actually probably the big giveaway in terms of what you're saying, that if we are going to have that 2-3 year boom and the inflation is yet to hit all these assets, gold is finally going to have its day. 15 years probably later than most people thought, or 17 years maybe.
Well,
But
I think
gold is
it's having its day, and it will continue to have its day for some time. But I think another way to look at it is that it's not necessarily about regulation. Regulation is good. Everybody really wants it. Everybody wants somebody to look out for their back. Nobody, you're not an anarchist, okay? And I'm not an anarchist. And anarchy. There's anarchy here, the jungle, where not much lives in the jungle because of its rules. It means that it can't really support much of a life. And then there's totalitarianism at the other end, and that's great until they shoot you, right? Somewhere in the middle is a good place, right? And regulation's fine, but there's good regulation, there's bad regulation. There's regulation that screws everything up, and there's regulation that enables. And if you've got regulation that screws everything up, then I think you can see a lot of that in the UK, and it does suppress value, and it does suppress markets. And the reason that the UK market is so weak is that it's one gigantic global hedge. Because what you do in a hedge is you pick companies that are strong. So you would go to an economy that's strong and an economy that's positive, and you buy their stuff. And then you go to a country which is messed up and constipated, and the companies could be good, but they're constantly hobbled by governance that doesn't enable them to excel. And then you sell them and you buy them, and now you're market neutral, aren't you? All you got to do is hedge your currency. So what's going on? What's actually making the UK market so weak is the fact that the American market is so strong, and it's being hedged into the dustbin, and there's no escape from that. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I have to tell you, I've been doing some stuff with the British government. They're really trying hard to break that death spiral. Really trying really hard.
But they'll do anything apart from lower taxes and reduce red tape and regulation, which are required.
They're going to try.
How's the stamp duty going? What's the stamp duty on Bitcoin? And what's the stamp duty?
Absolutely.
And what's the stamp duty in the US? They can't get rid of it. The inheritance tax thing, all the other things that we have are just the regulation, the cost of being listed. Everything is wrong. Everything is wrong.
It's far from optimal. Okay, if you want to go to well, I mean, pop into Yemen and see how their stock exchange is doing.
I'm sure they're not paying half a percent stamp duty on Yemen oil or whatever it's called.
You'd be surprised at how many countries have transaction tax. France has got one.
No, it's just that if we'd had the rules and regs that we have now in the 19th century. I don't think there would have been any railways built. I don't think there would have been any stations built. There wouldn't have been any factories built. There would have been nothing built. And
it was called China. It was called China back then. China had tons of regulation. They practically invented bureaucracy in
the Mandarin word.
Yeah, and they totally killed them as a society, right? Absolutely, yeah. So, because at the end of the day, it's a kind of official. It's a parasitic dynamic. It's a kind of corruption. Because the system is what gets paid from the effort of the workers, comrade, and everybody suffers because the actual fuel and energy of the economy and of society is drained away by a bunch of gatekeepers. I think it's understood. Goes back to the beginning of time, pretty much, and it grows. And Parkinson's Law is a great book. If people who are watching this haven't read it, read Parkinson's Law. It's a good chuckle, and it's got it nailed on because a bureaucracy will milk will pluck the goose, will kill the goose with a golden egg for sure. Yeah, because it grows and 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 it grows. And we remember the 70s and 80s, and remember Thatcher coming in and slashing it all back again. Yeah. And I can remember when they started growing it again. As soon as they kicked her out, they started to regrow it again. The GLC, they shut the GLC, turned it into a fish tank. Nobody noticed. And guess what? Then they built a new town hall. down the river a little bit and put another bloke with bad hair in there. I
Um,
mean, you couldn't make it up.
Yeah, no, I wanted to stand for mayor to, and I'd only have one policy, which would be to abolish the post on the first day. It'd be the shortest lived mayor of London ever. But unfortunately, that chance has not come yet. It's very, very disappointing. Right, well, we're coming to near the end, Clem, and obviously for clickbait purposes, it'd be good to have like
Well, I mean,
your top three things to look at and things to focus on.
well, I would say if you're in crypto, start to sweat when Bitcoin gets over 80,000, which might be very soon. Probably go to 120, could go to 140. Ethereum will lag by a couple of months. I will keep going a couple of months afterwards. Maybe not that much, but it will keep going. So I'll start to sweat again. 8,000 on Ethereum, could go to 10, could go to 12, could go to 14. But I'll be starting to wake up at night at 3 a.m. going, oh my God, what's the Ethereum price when it clears 8? And so that's crypto for you. I can't find any little cryptos that I want to get involved with because they're all a bit too expensive. So Dogecoin, I always call it Doggy Coin because it's got a dog and it's spelled DOGE. Doggy Coin, it's got the market cap of the Nasdaq stock market. And so has Uniswap, which is a crypto stock market, which is an example of what you're saying. They're not regulated; they're worth so much more. But they go up like a rocket and down like a rock. So if you you can't really. It's hard to invest in those sort of outfits, and they are more of a gamble, well, for sure, a gambling game. But anyway, in crypto, hold your Bitcoin. It's going to go a fairly bit further. Hold it until you start waking up at 2 a.m. in the morning worrying about the price. When it happens, just get rid of it and wait at 4 years and do it again. Underneath that, I just went boots in. I plunged, and I don't plunge, but I plunged in HelloFresh today because HelloFresh is down 93%. It's got 7 million subscribers. It does 5 billion in business. It's valued at the American equivalent of HelloFresh, according to Bloomberg, is valued at 25 times its value in terms of sales. One of its subscribers is valued at 140 pounds rather than 800 pounds if it was a Netflix subscriber, and it charges more for its subscriptions, and you don't starve if you lose your Netflix connection. And there it is. It's got 7 million subscribers, and I've never ever heard a company apart from Apple that the user base of it loves it so much. If I bump into anybody and sooner or later, if they're HelloFresh subscribers, they say, "Oh, and I use HelloFresh," and I go, "HelloFresh are good, aren't they?" They go, "Oh yes, hallelujah! I love HelloFresh. I made their Mexican fajitas last night, and it was wonderful." And this blooming thing's got a market cap of 1 billion on sales for 5 billion. It's got 300 million in the bank cash. It's got, the market didn't like the fact his subscriber base had gone down from 8 million to 7 million. It was 8 million during COVID, when everybody was locked up and couldn't go shopping.
Right. It's not actually that far off. It's not that far off its high watermark, which is an impossible high watermark. I mean, unless everybody's
exactly
locked in at home.
And everyone got upset because it's not going to have a $450 million EBITDA. It might be $350 million EBITDA, and it would be worth 40 billion in America. Right. So anyway, I couldn't resist. So I went in heavy this morning, and it's good. I'm already up like 8%, but it's one of those things. Once the funny thing was, I keep bumping into these little old ladies and young male singles and family people who keep raving on about this bloody HelloFresh, and I thought I should buy some of them. Internet company, platform, seem to own the hearts, minds, and stomachs of their customers. I should buy some of that, and it was $20. 20 euros a share. And I thought, well, 3 billion European in Germany, sell food. Oh, I can think of more cheaper things to buy. And then Bob's your uncle. 10 weeks later, I get it offered on the plate to me at €6.91. You couldn't
A
make it
German
up.
company, eh? A bit like German
Yeah,
Donegal.
German,
It's that kind of quality, eh? Well, probably.
etc., etc. And someone said to me, "Oh, they've got 20,000 employees. That's bad." And I thought, no, that's good. They're making a EBITDA profit, and all they've got to do is put a few robots in, and that headcount will come down like a rock, won't it?
Bit of AI as
So
well.
anyway, so that's my that,
Peak of the day.
that's my tip of today. And basically anything that people think is going to get taken over, i.e., pretty much the whole FTSE 100, it is golden. I mean, stuff in there with 8 and 9% dividends. I mean, I could borrow the money at 5%, yeah, buy the company, get my 9% dividend, pocket four, and own the business for free. I mean, or all you got to do is have a banker friend that's going to write you a check for a billion or two, and there's certainly guys out there doing who've got that, and you're going to come in and you're just going to say, yeah, can you pay me to buy your company? Thank you very much.
Well, Clem,
So
on that,
there's going to be an absolute tsunami of that, and it's already started. Kicked off again about 2 weeks ago.
yeah.
It
Well,
kicked off when Mondi bidded Smith's DS. That was the first one, and that's just the first indication that the fatberg's coming out of the outfall, and there's just a huge train of that. In fact, British government's going to panic at some point because Britain's going to get asset stripped.
what a shame. That would be terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Well, I
But I
mean,
suppose that money is coming into the UK. It'll be taxed at 40 or 50%. I mean, it's all good
in
stuff,
a
right?
good way, in a
It's
good
great.
way.
It's great. Fantastic. Clem, great to speak again, and hopefully we'll speak again soon. And you've been very specific and forthright about your comments, about your views on things. So no question, no room for doubt at all. Thank you very much indeed.
Very good to be on, Zach. 2-3 year bull market. Everybody should get on the train.
Thank you.